And Tawnya Foster, this is your time in the Grizzly Den. Step forward. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ryan, for giving me the opportunity to present. And also thank you to our lovely Grizzly panel for taking the time to also listen to myself and my peers present as well. I hope everyone had a great weekend, and I really hope that if you're in Calgary, you're enjoying the Stampede. My name is Tawnya Foster, and I'm a human resources professional with several years of experience supporting employees at every stage of the employee life cycle. I was born in Toronto, Ontario, and at the age of 4, I was brought into the foster care system. At the age of 9, I was told by a psychologist that I would not amount to anything. However, I was determined to prove them wrong, and I have proven them wrong. I'm currently 25 years old, and I have a Bachelor of Business in Human Resources. I've lived abroad in Ireland for 2 years, and I have worked at some really amazing companies in the human resources field. I'm passionate about building community and bringing people together. I have a vegan meetup group that I started about a year ago, where people in the Calgary area can come together to try new food, as well as meet other like-minded people. I also bring community building into the workplace, where I enjoy collaborating with people to be able to address both the immediate needs of the business and align them to the long-term goals of the company. The position that I'm currently looking for is an HR advisor and HR business partner within a large organization. So I'm thinking about an organization of about 5,000 employees or more. And I'm really looking for a company that both prioritizes diversity and inclusion, as well as a company that supports with long-term growth. I'm looking to grow within the next 5 to 10 years into a leadership role within HR. And so I'm looking for a company that supports that. My ask for the Grizzlies is two things today. So my first ask is to provide any sort of feedback that you have, any blind spots that I may need to address in order to land higher. And then the second one is to provide any sort of insight to leads or networking opportunities that you feel appropriate. So again, thank you for taking the opportunity to listen to me, and I welcome any questions that you have.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Tawnya. So just for clarification, I just want to make sure we're on the right track here. So HR advisor or HR business advisor type of thing. Mid-sized company, and you said about up around 5,000 people ideally, and so a company that has the opportunity for growth and is where DEI is focused on. Well, you have a good group here. All right. Is there anything else as far as your target market, preferably with industries or anything like that you'd like for clarification or?
Yeah, so I'm really open to a lot of industries. I have looked at a couple of companies in specific that I'd be interested in working for. So University of Calgary is one that I'm really interested in. I'm also interested in Enbridge, and I'm also open to Government of Alberta or the Alberta Health Service. I'm open to that as well, as long as there's opportunity for growth.
Okay. I'll probably have a question later, but I'm going to open up to this to the Grizzlies. So Grizzlies, we're not going to have it's going to be quite organic today. Just let anyone choose to ask a question. There's no raising hands or anything like that. Just go ahead, and whoever would like to ask the first question for Tawnya, go ahead.
Well, I can maybe jump in and ask a question, Tawnya. So great to meet you today, and that was a very concise and pointed presentation. So thank you for that. It was great. So maybe if we just kind of think about, it sounds like you've got some good clarity in terms of where you want to go, and you're mentioning a larger size company. So what are some of the reasons for that larger size company? And if you kind of look back through your career over the last several years, can you give us an example of maybe some of the things that you've learned that are pointing you towards why a larger company is where you want to end up?
Yeah, thank you very much, Caroline, for asking that question. So when I look back at my career, so when I was living in Ireland, I was a welfare and equality officer there, and I was a part of a small union group where I was building policy and I was implementing campaigns for a university organization. And so I really enjoyed that aspect of it. But then when I moved to Canada, I got into Amazon. And what I loved about working at Amazon was I loved the employee relations side of things. I supported a site of 2,500 employees. And what I really liked was the fact that I could build community within that size of an organization. And so that's kind of why I really like that. And then I moved to Neo where we were expanding. And so I was working on lots of projects there. And I liked that as well. But what I found that I missed was, again, building that community and being able to I call it bridge the gap between employees and managers. So I really am passionate about that. And so I see that ability to do that in a large organization, potentially where there's some complexity, for example, where there might be labor unions, where I can support with negotiations and that side of things as well.
That's terrific. Thank you, Tawnya.
Yeah, thank you.
Hi, Tawnya.
Oh,
Hi.
sorry.
Oh, sorry, Jessica.
Go.
Okay. Thank you for sharing your story and a little bit about your background there. And, you know, when you kind of said that someone had told you that you wouldn't amount to anything like it, I mean, that got to me. So thank you for being vulnerable there and sharing that. Can you say, like, how did you take that on? And then you've completely just blown that expectation out of the water. What was it about that? Like, how did you actually take that and make that something positive in your life? When you had somebody say something so negative to you, and you've now turned it around and become, you know, a very accomplished person in your adulthood. So how did that work for you?
Yeah, thanks, Lauren, for that question. So I believe for me, when I heard that at 9 years old, I didn't believe that. And my parents also didn't believe that. And so together we kind of worked on how do we overcome this? And so throughout school, I was on an IEP and I overcame that. In high school, I was very determined. I want to go to university. I want to get a degree. And so for me, it's been my motivation to keep going, to move forward. And throughout my kind of career and throughout my life, I've always been determined to like keep going and just look for people that I can cling on to that will also support that narrative as well. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for that, and congratulations, because that, you know, like I said, you've become an accomplished person in your adulthood now, and that's wonderful to see that you just really took that on and made your own path.
Thank you. Yeah.
Hi, Tawnya. I'm going to jump in. So thank you very much for sharing. That was a really great story, and I love that. And what I love about that is that you were vulnerable, like we already said, but that's really nice because anyone who is in HR and anyone who's reviewing resumes, we know that we get like 500 resumes a day. So it's nice when you can share and it brings you to life off of the page. So thank you for doing that, and good job to you for being courageous enough to share that with us. So I'm looking at your hobbies and stuff, and you said that you were you started a vegan meetup group. Can you share with us how that came to be, and what passion you get involved in there, and just share a little bit more about that with us?
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, thank you so much, Jessica, for your comments and question. So I became a vegan about a year and a half ago myself. So prior to that, I was a vegetarian, mostly for health reasons, but then I kind of went into veganism for health as well and ethical reasons. And so my desire to start a vegan social group was this idea of I want to get people within the community together. And there are activism groups out there, but not all vegans want to participate in street activism. And so I was like, let's create a group that people can come together. We can go out to restaurants, we can socialize, and like any other kind of community, like for example, religious communities and other sort of interest communities, there are those groups. And so because I saw that there wasn't that in Calgary, I thought I would create that. And so it's been a really cool experience. I've got about over 140 people in the group already. So yeah, so it's fun. I love it.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing that. I totally thought you were going to be like, there's 8 people in the group. But that's fantastic. Good for you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you. Yeah.
I guess I can go next. I also appreciated your story, and I thought it was a very powerful message that you delivered. So thank you for sharing it with us today. My question is, from a skills perspective, what do you think are your greatest strengths that you would be able to offer to an employer?
Yeah, thank you, Michael, for that question. So I am the type of person that I call it bridge the gap between employees and managers. So I'm the type of person that can bring two parties from different groups together. And so an example of that is when I was working at a university as a welfare and equality officer, I was wanting to create a campaign to engage with our students and staff so that our campaign would engage with more people and we would utilize our resources better. I saw a gap in that the campaigns that I was putting on were not getting very much student engagement. And so this idea of bringing students and staff together in order to create that campaign was something that I wanted to create to do that. And so what I did was I decided to reach out to our HR officer, asked her if she was interested in collaborating on the staff side of things. She agreed. And so then we engaged with some industry professionals, and while the industry professionals were very expensive, I decided to go to some of various staff and students within the institute and ask them if they wanted to bring ideas to this campaign. When they agreed, I created a committee and we were able to execute on the campaign. And so what that did was that drove engagement for that campaign, meaning that our resources that we were putting into that campaign were utilized better. And it also increased the reputation of the institute. And so my ability to bring people together from different sides of the employment or client relationship is something that I excel at.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Tawnya, I want to follow up a little bit more on some of that experience. You've got a pretty clear idea of the kind of employer. So you've talked about open to any industry, but really that strong diversity and inclusion and a relatively large company. Can you why you find that kind of organization most interesting? What is it about your the way that you work, or if you have any stories to share around specific instances that that makes you most interested in those larger organizations?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you, Monica, for that. So when I look at a large company, I align it to what my career goals are. So today I look at myself as being an HR advisor and HR business partner, and I'm looking towards growth. So I mapped out earlier on in this higher landing process, I mapped out a timeline where I want my career to be. And so I looked at within the next 5 years, an HR manager role, within the next 10 to 15 years, an HR director role, and so on. And so I feel like in order to get those milestones of manager and directorship, I really need to be exposed to a large variety of HR topics. And I feel like a large company, a relatively large company, will have a sophisticated enough HR department in order to be able to work in those different areas in order to get to that career kind of goal that I have. The other piece of it as well is that I'm looking for a mentor and someone who has experience. And so those large companies will have other HR team members there as well that will be able to provide that mentorship, that have the experience, and will help me grow my career.
Great. And just a follow-up question to that, thinking about yourself approaching a larger organization, tell me about how you would pitch why they would benefit from investing in you, so that career path will open up.
Yeah, that's a really great follow-up question as well. So in a kind of world where we have quiet firing and we have quiet quitting, and there was this new term I heard the other day called fun employment, where unemployed people have fun instead of finding work. In this world where we have these terms, one of the things that you can kind of say from that is there's this adversarial relationship between employees and managers. And so my ability to bring those two parties together and collaborate with each other and work well together will increase retention and also reduce turnover, which will then reduce the cost to recruitment, but then also will support the company in its long-term objectives. And so that's the value that I will really bring to a large organization.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Grizzlies, we probably have time for a few more follow-up questions if anyone has something else they'd like to ask.
I have one, just maybe following up just on that last topic that you had. In terms of like working as an HR professional, there's often a need to influence leaders that you're working with or employees without having the formal authority to do so. So they don't report directly into you, but there is a large requirement to influence. Do you have an example from your history that you can share with us of where you've been able to successfully influence another individual that, again, maybe it's a leader that you're working with because you'll have to get them to follow policy or guideline, or there could be many different scenarios, but can you give us an example of that and how you navigated that situation?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I was working at Amazon, I had a leader who had just been promoted into a management position. And so they had been with the organization for several years. However, they were new to people management and they had a performance concern with an employee. And so my role was to make sure to navigate that employment concern with them and ensure that they're applying policy consistently and fairly. And so the manager wanted to kind of just do one thing with the employee, just discipline them. However, they hadn't previously coached them. And so what I did was I discussed with the manager the importance of coaching them, why that might help prevent any further performance issues. And I walked them through the policy, the progressive disciplinary policy. And so the result was that the manager was then able to go back, have coachings, documented coachings with the employee, and the concern of that employee's performance was resolved. And so my ability to handle a situation where that manager kind of pushed back on me with being able to say, hey, this is what our policy is, and explain to them the importance of that policy and adhering to it, it helped me be able to mitigate risk for the company as well.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that question.
Any other questions from the Grizzlies?
Well, I could just jump in and so this is maybe you know, I started my career at Shell, very large company. And ultimately I was with Shell for about 5 years and I found it wasn't a great fit for me. So one of the things that I noticed about working for a very large company is sometimes they are a little bit slower to embrace change. And so do you have any concerns, I guess, about, you know, a larger company, because you're so dynamic, you've done so many things, like, you know what I mean, you want to take action. What about the kind of the flip side to that? And because I think it makes complete sense to me in terms of career progression and professional development, although you could end up in a role for several years at a large company, and will that be dynamic enough for you, I guess, is my question. So what are your thoughts around that, Tawnya?
Yeah, that's a really great question. And I think that for me, I've worked in the dynamic organization before, both large, Amazon was very dynamic, but also small. And what I'm really looking for as I look towards the next stage of my career is that strategic side of HR and how we're thinking more strategically about what we're doing. And so while I can address the immediate needs of the business, I really like to address both the immediate needs and then align them to the long-term goals. And so I believe that a larger organization will provide that. Yeah, thank you.
All right. Probably time one more of this. Your answers are so concise, Tawnya. Any other questions from the Grizzlies? If not, I do have one. All right. So what's holding you back? What's stopping you right now?
I think that for me, what has really kind of been the barrier is my interviewing skills, and I'm being vulnerable in saying that. And so while I've been able to get a resume through an ATS, I've found that I've struggled in being able to share the star stories and to be able to have the interviews kind of understand the important pain points of the companies that I'm working for. And so Higher Landing has really supported me in being able to understand the importance of researching before an interview, being able to use the STAR formula to answer the questions and present the best that I can in my brand. And so that I feel like is what's held me back.
Excellent. And you kind of touched on it there, but what has been your aha moment in Higher Landing?
Yeah, for me, it's been working with my coach, specifically on the STAR stories. So being able to refine those and get them to a point where I'm comfortable sharing stories in a concise manner. that also illustrates the value that I would bring to an organization. Yeah.
Perfect. All right. Well, I think that's everything. Thank you very much for your presentation. That was really concise, which is I love, especially first thing on a
Thank you.
Monday morning. Thank you very
Thank
much,
you.
Tawnya, for your presentation. We're going to draw this to a close. As you know, because you've been watching for the last week, we're going to be deliberating for a few minutes, and we'll invite you into the Grizzly Lair shortly.
Awesome. Thank you so much to everyone.
Thanks, Tawnya. So without further ado, I don't think it's going to be much of a surprise for you, but I want to congratulate you that the Grizzlies have decided
Thank you.
to certify you today. So congratulations.
Awesome. Thank you.